We meet in very challenging times, given the risks to the global recovery, particularly in the Eurozone. I'd be surprised if there's any room for complacency at this year's summit. But I'd equally be surprised if there's not some counterbalancing optimism about the region's long-term economic prospects. We do not need to labour the point, but over the next decade or two, the Asia-Pacific region is where growth is likely to come from for most of the world's economy. The only one clear message from recent events and recent democratic elections is that no government can sell austerity alone on a sustained basis. Deleveraging the vast public and private sector debt has to happen, particularly in the developed countries. But there has to be a growth story in the mix as well. For most of us meeting here in Vladivostok, the vast growing Asia-Pacific region is central to that growth story. The rapid growth of trade and investment ties amongst our economies is led by our private sectors. And while the private sector is in the driver's seat, governments have an important role to play in setting the right conditions to allow business to flourish. And governments can do a lot through the streamlining of regulation, supporting solid infrastructure and facilitating investment. In that regard, I'm very proud of my government's record, and over the last 4 years in office we've done a number of things, from cutting taxes to ensuring that we have reformed labour laws and reduced regulation. Just last week, the World Economic Forum upgraded New Zealand's place in terms of global competitiveness from 25th in the world to 23rd. Governments can also help to turbocharge economic growth by negotiating ambitious trade and investment agreements, and that sits at the heart of, I think, the topic that we're debating today. Negotiations currently underway, which offers the greatest promise, is of course the Trans-Pacific Partnership. TPP started from pretty humble beginnings with 2 open economies, Singapore and New Zealand, and has since expanded to include 11 countries. Most recently, Mexico and Canada have been invited to join, and I'd be surprised if it's likely to stop there, with countries like Japan showing tremendous interest. So TPP has strong momentum, no question there. Its long-run objective, of course, is to act as a building block for an Asia-Pacific wide free trade agreement. What is critical now is that TPP achieves the high-quality goals that we have set it. A low-quality FTA reminiscent of many of the FTAs concluded in the late 20th century would be a road to nowhere. The bar has been raised by recent, more ambitious agreements in the region. So in TPP, we are trying to establish a club with high standards and stringent dress codes. All governments involved will have to take some tough decisions if we are to get there. But I am convinced that a high-quality TPP is not only achievable, but critical for growth in the region. So TPP is an exciting pro-growth initiative, but we also need to be honest about what TPP can achieve and what it cannot. One thing we should be clear about, and clear to all of us, is that as good as these bilateral and regional trade agreements are, they cannot substitute for the global trading system and the institution that governs that, the WTO. One reason for this is that while least developed countries would benefit hugely from rich countries opening up their markets, the reality is that least developed countries aren't often invited to participate in the FTA negotiations. The WTO is the only way to ensure that all economies, including the least developed, get to enjoy the benefits of trade liberalisation. Another drawback of FTAs, of course, is that they only deal with barriers to trade and investment. They don't get to the heart of some of the imbalances, such as those created by subsidising industries. One area where the WTO could help to facilitate stronger economic growth would be taking on the very high, unsustainable levels of domestic support and other forms of substitution in the agricultural sector. Unwinding subsidies is not easy. We in New Zealand know that from our own experience. And while there is some pain as the subsidies are wound back, as we found in New Zealand, farmers responded very quickly to the signals. They cut costs, they improved productivity, and they responded to market demand. And now, as a result of that, New Zealand has the truly only unsubsidised agricultural sector in the world with arguably the best yields and highest productivity. The same thing can be said of the wine industry in New Zealand. So imagine the benefits of freeing up the hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer-funded subsidies which are poured into agriculture, fisheries and a number of other industries. With Japan, the United States and the European Union all facing huge challenges to reduce their fiscal deficits and get public sector debt under control, what is plainly evident is that this level of subsidisation is no longer affordable or sustainable. What is also true is that the opportunity to eliminate around 80% of these subsidies in a politically negotiated and reciprocal deal while still providing a safe harbour for less distorting policies is staring political leaders in the face. For 2 years now there has been a deal on the table in Geneva, and while the negotiations are currently held up by a number of unresolved issues, a resolution is possible through a deal that seeks to build on what we've already agreed on while tackling subsidies and other thorny issues. Now is the time for leaders from around the world to be bold, to start the process of eliminating distorting and costly subsidies and start down the long road of deficit reduction. So Mr Chairman, while this weekend in Vladivostok we, the leaders of the 21 economies around, along with the private sector, must continue to work to deliver on an economic agenda that ensures that we are best placed to weather the aftermath of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, while seeking to benefit from the obvious opportunities that this rapidly growing and industrial region presents. There is more work to be done on the world stage as well, and I actively encourage leaders to grasp that opportunity and to liberalise the world's trade economies. Thank you very much.